It is truly sad when your expectations for a show is set so high and your hype levels cannot be contained, only to have all of that destroyed the moment the show kind of goes downhill for you. And that's unfortunately the feeling that I got with RWBY Ice Queendom, a series that aired in the summer 2022 anime season. This is my review of the series, so let's jump into it. RWBY Ice Queendom opens up in a world that is ravaged by these beings known as the Grimms. And while they're at their worst, they finally discovered a way to fight back against the Grimm. Using this material known as dust, they were able to fight back, using their abilities known as the aura and their semblances. Jumping forward, we follow a girl named RWBY. And RWBY has a sister named Yang who has recently been accepted into the Beacon Academy, a place that trains these hunters that fight against the Grimms. Well, RWBY's happy about her sister, but at the same time bummed that she herself cannot go as well. Well, after a series of events with some robbers trying to rob a place that sells dust, RWBY is accepted into the Beacon Academy alongside her sister. And so we follow the two of them as they enter the Beacon Academy. They go through this whole exam that basically tries to put different teams together until ultimately she joins the Beacon Academy, and that's where things unfortunately go downhill for RWBY. RWBY is teamed up with Weiss, a girl that is actually the daughter of somebody who heads the company that sells the dust. Blake, who is a former member of the White Fang group, which is a group of people that are basically trying to attack and fight back against the company who's kind of been persecuting them because they are a different race. And finally, Yang, who is RWBY's sister. Why I say things go downhill is because one of the members of this team, Weiss, has been inflicted by what they call a nightmare, which is a type of Grimm that sort of puts somebody into a deep sleep while drawing power from their aura. And what makes matters worse is the only people that can go inside of their mind and their dreams in order to fight this Grimm off are people that Weiss has some sort of trust with, which is difficult because Weiss doesn't really trust anybody. So this becomes a race against time as Weiss is inflicted by this Grimm, and the more time that passes, the more likely that she'll never wake up again. So RWBY and her team has to figure out a way to infiltrate Weiss's mind and fight back against this Grimm. So my thoughts on RWBY Ice Queendom. I am extremely disappointed, and I hate that. This is a series that when it was first announced, I was extremely excited. For a long time, several people in the Otaku Spirit community have really been pushing me, please go watch RWBY, it's really cool. And to be honest, the moment I seen it, I really wasn't into it. Visually, it did not look good to me. It was using a CGI that just didn't look good. I respected the efforts that were put into it, and a lot of the fight scenes were really cool and really well put together. But overall, it just looked like really nasty, stiff CGI. So the moment that I heard that Shaft, Kindro Okada, To Ubukata, and Jinro Buchi were all working on an anime version of it, I was absolutely thrilled. The trailer looked amazing, the fights and everything looked great, and then I got the show. Now to be honest, the first 3 episodes were fantastic. The animation in there was great. They skipped one fight scene that I was really looking forward to seeing in an anime format, but overall it looked good, the character chemistry was great. Everything was setting up for a fantastic anime rendition of RWBY. And after those first 3 episodes, that's when we get into the original content. Because the first 3 episodes sort of like a blitz through the content that it opens up with the original series. From episode 4 on to I think the beginnings of the last episode, that was all original and wasn't good. It just wasn't good. Now first, visually, it was bad. The first 3 episodes were fantastic. It is almost like a movie. They put so much effort into it. It looked fantastic. But episode 4, it's like a completely different studio took it over. Everything looked flat. Nothing had dimension to it. No shading. Everything just looked so plain looking. You had CGI being used for certain fights that looked really stiff. You even had CGI being used for characters standing up from tables, for Pete's sake. And it wasn't until the last episode where they apparently adapted a food fight from the original series that they finally kick it back up again. It's almost like anything that was done previously in the previous series, they had to one-up it. But everything else, they put 0 effort into it. It just barely moved. Like, it was to the point where it was just barely enough to call this an animation. And that's the unfortunate thing because, like I said, I came to this wanting an anime version of what I couldn't watch because it was stiff-looking CGI, and yet they gave me stiff CGI over here. Now, that's not the end of the problems. Really the crux, like I can forgive bad animation. I've dealt with bad animation for a long time. Yes, it's disappointing, but if there's still something here, I'm fine with it. But the problem really is the main core problem with RWBY Ice Queendom is the story, and the characters and everything just didn't do anything for me. The main core concept of Ice Queendom is the idea of Weiss being trapped in a nightmare world, and only those that she can trust can enter her mind to save her. yet everybody jumps in. Like, it doesn't seem like it even adheres to its own rules that it establishes from the very beginning. We only had really an episode worth of time to really have these characters bond, and there was no bonding. Weiss didn't trust anybody. She felt above everybody. Even RWBY herself, she acted like she was a friend of RWBY because she hated the fact that RWBY was the leader and that she wanted to get buddy-buddy with her. And the only reason that she stood beside Blake, who is literally of the race that is the enemy of her family, was because she didn't care to think about it. This isn't bonding. So the idea that these characters enter her mind and have to struggle with her inner struggles makes very little sense to me. Yeah, I can see that RWBY and Blake and Yang will over time understand Weiss better because they're able to see sort of symbolic versions of what Weiss conflicts with. But when it comes down to characters really trying to talk to each other, it doesn't make any sense. The sacrifices that characters are going through in order to basically free Weiss doesn't make any sense. Why would Blake risk everything to save somebody who doesn't really like her? Yes, you can shrug it off because RWBY's sort of a little bit ditz. He's sort of pure nature, so she's gonna fight to help somebody. She wanted to be Weiss's friend. Yang, yes, I can see her being more justice driven. She's probably gonna fight a little bit, but Blake is, I think, the biggest struggle. But in the end, why does Weiss accept them doesn't make any sense. It all comes down to essentially a story arc that requires trust. Trust that was never established to begin with. So thus it makes it a little difficult. But the bigger issue with the story overall is that this is just a ongoing battle. 8 episodes of basically trying to hit the same idea over and over and over again. By the 3rd episode of this dream aspect, it was like they were spinning their wheels. And yes, technically this is the concept. The concept of Weiss being stuck in this nightmare is the story, but they didn't do enough to both present interesting concepts and really have the characters have chemistry. It wasn't until the last episode that I realized, wow, so they can write chemistry. I loved it. I loved the last episode. It felt like, wow, this is a normal show with some good characters and character moments. Everything between the 3rd episode and the last episode was just literally useless fluff. It felt like a filler arc, something you would put inside of a long-running shonen where there's zero character development and doesn't feel like the characters are really connecting. By the 5th and 6th episode, I just wanted it to be over with because it wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun. Characters weren't progressing. Like I said, it literally felt like the story was just spinning its wheels and going nowhere. It felt repetitive. And ultimately, in the end, it felt uninspired. I could say you probably could have condensed this entire arc into 1 episode and would probably still have the same impact. So in the end, coupling the bad story with the bad animation, it felt like a waste of time. Almost kind of one of those things where I recommend watching the first 3 episodes and then watch the last episode and be done with it. It's enough that makes me kind of hope that they don't do a sequel. I really don't want a sequel at this point. Because again, one of the big driving force for a lot of people's inspiration to check out the original RWBY series was the really cool fight scenes. And if Shaft can't manage that, then don't bother. But anyways, that's my thoughts on RWBY Ice Queendom. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment. Let me know what you thought of the series. Do you like it? Were you okay with the animation? I'm perfectly fine with people enjoying it, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody that considers supporting us, and y'all take care.